And welcome, everyone. And thank you so much for being on the Temple Hayes on Fire for Life show. And we kind of tagged it after that wonderful quote by Howard Thurman: stop thinking about what the world needs and start asking yourself what makes you come alive. Because the world needs more people that are vibrant, alive, filled with hope and knowing and dreams. And that's what we're about on this show. And we tend to always feature, of course, amazing authors and healers, teachers, specialists in various healthcare fields, because we like to give people a wide range of what is possible and what is evolving. I'm very excited about our guest today, Judy Tsafrir, in that she has made many changes in her career. She is a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst. She is a shaman healer. She's a healer at large, and she has made many discoveries along the way. So let's bring Judy into the show. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in either now or later. And if you are alive with us, well, first of all, I hope you are alive. But if you're tuning in now and you want to ask Judy a question, please do so, and we'll make sure she has that. Judy, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
It's a real pleasure. So, in your, when the teacher said, "What do you want to be when you grow up, Judy?" What were you thinking at the time, or were you? Did you have a sense of what you wanted to be about?
A ballerina.
Did you? That was your dream?
When I was little,
Yeah, and
Oh well, that
not
didn't
yet. Not
that
yet.
didn't last very long.
Not
But
yet. Oh, wow. And then you,
so I liked that quote that you read about what makes you feel alive. You
I'll
know,
repeat it again because I thrive on it. It aligns me shamanically to the greater aspect of myself, right? In that, so Howard Thurman says, stop asking what the world needs and ask what makes you come alive, because that's what the world needs. The world needs more people to be alive. When you think about that, I mean, I love it for many reasons. And it's like those beautiful quotes that, are like our guidelines, I think, but we kind of grow into them differently. And the world that we are exposed to on social media, on 24-hour news of what's the worst thing that's happened all day long, it doesn't really give us a clear view of the world in the first place. So when you think about it, if we put more energy into being alive and bringing goodness to the world, in whatever world that we are living in, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
right, and that you're then, your vibration is very elevated, and you're spreading something very positive if you feel alive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I mean, you have such a huge background, and I urge other people to go to your website. Andrea is going to put it in comments and know more about you. You have been aligned with Harvard Medical School, many other universities. Um, how did your path shape? I mean, how did you become interested in psychiatry and parts of our brain and our well-being?
Well, it goes back to childhood, and my father was a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst, and there was a lot of mental illness in the family,
Mm,
and it was something that, like, he thought it was like the most wonderful thing you could do was to be a psychiatrist.
mm,
So that was a big influence, and he was also an astrologer, but he kept that in the closet. I'm also an astrologer, and when like I did a conventional training, and I practiced as a psychoanalyst for many years until I was about 49 years old, a fairly conventional psychoanalyst practice. I didn't prescribe medications that much, though I would. And then when I was 49, both my parents died within 3 months of one another.
Oh,
And my marriage ended, and I had 3 little children. And I was just kind of putting one foot in front of another. And I decided for the first time to consult a professional astrologer, like what is going on here.
mhm.
And I was so fascinated with the conversation that we had together
Mhm.
that I went back to see her multiple times. I wanted to look at the charts of my children and all of the important people in my life, because it was so mind blowing that she could know so much about me by just casting this chart, and that was based upon my birth date and birth time and birthplace. And after I had gone to see her for about a year and a half or 2 years, I decided that I wanted to learn to do this myself, to be able to
Mhm.
use astrological wisdom. And so I apprenticed with a well-known astrologer named Stephen Forrest for a couple of years, and then with another well-known astrologer named Reis. And that was kind of the gateway for me. Like, I just started at that point exploring many different things. I started studying shamanism and energy healing and functional medicine. It was like, when a person is 49 years old, there's an astrological event that occurs that's called the Chiron return.
Mm.
And a planetary return occurs when the planet comes back to the same place that it was when the person was born. So everybody has a Chiron return when they're 49, 50. And many times that's when people consult me in my practice. Like, there's something that they feel some kind of internal pressure. There's some way in which something that is some essential way that they've been wounded needs to be addressed. And there's this impetus to spiritualize their life. And also, mortality comes into focus more for the first time. And for women, it represents the time where they're going through hormonal transition. And Chiron was, in mythology, he was a holistic healer. And
Mm.
the orbit of Chiron, the asteroid itself, or comet, or whatever it is, people can't decide how to classify it. It weaves between Saturn and Uranus, and Saturn was the last planet that was visible to the naked eyes. That's the ancients only knew about the planets through Saturn. Uranus was only discovered when there was a telescope. So Chiron represents sort of the weaving between the 3D measurable world and that world which is not measurable, but which also exists. And so in that way, it's very interesting. It's Chiron is not just, Chiron was a centaur. He was half human, half horse. And so Chiron is not just like one thing. And he was the mentor to all of the sons of the Greek kings. They all sent their sons to be educated by him because he was like a polymath. He knew about healing and herbalism and astrology and war and music. And Chiron eventually was wounded by one of his students, Hercules, who shot him in the thigh with the arrow tipped in the blood of the Hydra, which created a wound that couldn't be healed. So Chiron also represents those kinds of things that in some ways we can't really entirely get over. They're something that has marked us in some way and caused suffering, but very often we grow through that wounding.
Mhm.
And he eventually offered to change places with Prometheus because he felt compassion for him. He had been chained to a rock by the gods for giving fire to humankind, and Chiron exchanged places with him and set him free. And the gods were moved by Chiron's altruism and put him up in the sky as a constellation. But it's also, so therefore represents like the way that acts of service can really be elevating for us, and that we can, in a way, save ourselves through our acts of service to others.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love, I mean, I was born metaphysical, with a metaphysical awareness. And in studying metaphysics, it was actually confusing because to me, it was just innate, So when I got into my head about these are the 5 steps of metaphysics, I went, what? There's steps, whatever. But just being born in that. But astrology has always been such a strong part of my life, especially like the last 30 years. Like I would call the astrologer and say, I've got a book I want to send to some publishing houses. When would you advise me to do it? And,
timing.
It's spot on. And my goddaughter is visiting me from Florida. And she was born on November 12th, 2015. And I was talking to an astrologer that I hadn't talked to in many, many years. I've had a regular one for a long time, but she was someone I'd only talked to once. And so she's like, oh, well, tell me all about, what's been going on in the last 20 years. And I said, you're not going to believe it, but I have this child now. And she said, and tell me the date. And she said, absolutely. It was in your chart, on that day to have a child. So it is, I'm just fascinated by astrology. And I don't understand, with it being such a tool. I mean, that's the question I ask myself sometimes. With all the tools that we have, why don't we use them? Because they're so incredible. I mean, so powerful. And they're a guideline. And they're like, putting in an address in your Waze or your Google map or whatever. You can decide to go off of it, but this is the easiest way you could get there with the least amount of stress, probably.
Right. So like astrology could be like very useful, like in the ways that you were describing, like what would be like an auspicious time for me to release this book. But it also can be extremely helpful if you have a deep understanding of it, in terms of understanding other people and understanding yourself. Like Like there's a famous astrologer, she's actually Oprah's astrologer, her name is Chani Nicholas, and she wrote a book that's called Astrology for Radical Self-Acceptance. Oh, she was called Born for This, Astrology for Radical Self-Acceptance. And there's just something about astrology that when you look at a person's chart and you see the different energies that are present, then you don't expect someone to be different than the way that their chart is represented. So for instance, it's been extremely helpful to me with my 3 children to understand who they are and not to expect them to be different than how they are. Right. Like it promotes acceptance and tolerance.
Mm-hmm. And you use it actively in are you currently doing a practice?
Yes, I have a practice, and it really depends on the patient. Like some patients, they come to see me because I am an astrologer and they're very interested in that, and they would like to talk with me about their astrology. And, some patients we'll work together for a long time and they say, can we look at my chart today? I feel like there's something going on. Then other patients, they have no interest in it, and so it's really up to the person themselves how much it's part of things. I very often look at it myself just to have a better understanding of who I'm working with.
Sure. And in your years of astrology, because you're talking a few years now, since you were 51? Not that long, but a while ago.
Yeah.
Did you? What have been some of your greatest rewards from working with astrology?
It's just such a great companion, like it just constantly helps you make sense of things. It helps you make sense of other people. It helps you make sense of events in the world. And it's it's like this proof of the mysterious nature of the universe. That here you see something that doesn't make any kind of rational sense as far as we could like explain a mechanism, and yet you see that it is so. And that, like, if that is so, like, so many other things are so.
Sure.
And I love that part about it.
Yeah, the more well-rounded, part of our humanity.
Right, our multi-dimensional selves.
Yes. Now, as I was reading about you, and you were talking about the defining moment of 49, and I've heard of people that, even my mother's not on this side now, but you live and then you go, whoa, I don't know if we were as compassionate as we could have been. My mom's parents died within 8 months from each other. And I don't recall that we probably could have done better, but hindsight's always like that. But 3 months apart and a change in marriage, that is a big jolt, isn't it? Like you're saying, it's like, whoa, I call them a spiritual relocation. Like, this occurs, that occurs, that occurs, and you didn't foresee it coming, and it just jolts us to a new place. Is that moving into that, and in astrology, is that when you started redefining your practice? Because I've been reading up on you, and I was so intrigued by that, and impressed, because often, people, they're in the comfort zone, and this is my practice and I'm successful. I'm just going to keep doing it the way I've always done it. And then they retire out or whatever. But that's quite a thing to just totally shift the way.
Right. And it was gradual. It was like adding one skill, adding another skill. I mean, at the very first thing, the first thing was the astrology, but I didn't necessarily add that in. That was just something that kind of opened me up. Yes. But the first thing that I added in was, and it was way ahead of the time, way ahead of the curve. It wasn't talked about the way it is talked about everywhere today, the connection between the gut and the brain. I studied with Natasha Campbell McBride, a Russian neurologist who had cured her 3-year-old son of autism, with diet and lifestyle practices. And so I started incorporating her work into my practice. And then I studied with a biochemist who used nutrients to treat psychiatric disorders, and I incorporated that. And then, started to study shamanism. Everything was like Reiki. Everything was like one thing after another, and sort of following the breadcrumbs. One thing led to another thing. Right. It wasn't like all at once.
Sure.
And all the while, I continued to, and I still have today patients who are in psychoanalysis with me and psychotherapy, and it's just a very eclectic practice now. I'm able to help many different kinds of people that I couldn't help previously. A lot of patients with chronic complex medical conditions come to see me because I've learned about how to help with that. I wouldn't have been able to help them before. You can't help them with just talking.
Right. If talking did it, talking would do it.
Yeah.
My shaman teacher would say, too much talking, and she would also say, if you're telling them, they may or may not be absorbing it all. It's when they tell you that that true change is occurring. And for me, I can't imagine my work without the knowledge, awareness, and practice of shamanism, because there is so much that's going on that we're not conscious of, obviously, or it may not be going on,
Right. And so much like I don't think that I would be nearly as effective if I was just kind of relying on my own small self to do the work. Like I ask for assistance from, the helping spirits. And then I feel as though I'm able to be much more helpful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. So, what's your passion these days? I mean, what are you focusing the most on?
Well, I there's over the course of my practice, there's been a type of nervous system retraining that is incredibly powerful, because much of chronic illness, and I mean, depression and anxiety are chronic illnesses, and they represent, inflammation in the body and in the brain. And much of that is fueled by people having a lack of safety in their bodies. It's fueled by, stress and fear. And so initially, I was recommending to patients this approach called dynamic neural retraining system, which is like a limbic system retraining system. And then I subsequently would recommend more often something called the Gupta program, which is essentially, they're all essentially the same things, but they come at it in different ways. And most recently, I'm recommending something called primal trust to my patients. And they offered to practitioners that, like, so that I really understand what I'm recommending to my patients, that I could do the program myself. And so I'm doing the program, and it's incredibly well done. And I'm, it's like a series of videos where the kind of science of what happens in our bodies when we're under states of like chronic stress and fear. And then eventually there are many tools that are taught to help reprogram the brain and the limbic system, and also tonify the vagus nerve. And so I've only gotten so far as that I learned the first tool, but I think it's just such a great tool. Like it's, if like a person like has like a symptom, like they're they feel itchy, or they have some kind of pain somewhere, and then they focus upon that and they get anxious about that, then that creates a whole stress response in the body. So what is recommended is that you say, stop, cancel, and then you like you're aware of what you're doing. Or it could be like a bad thought, something self-critical, or something, either you're looking at the past and regretting something and feeling badly about it, or you're catastrophizing about the future. Anyhow, you take a breath and you bring yourself back to the present moment. And then you, like for 30 seconds, just tune into your senses. So what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you tasting? And you might need to do that like multiple times in the hour, because you're constantly going back to, those symptoms and that habitual way of stressing about things. But eventually you retrain your brain. And I think it's just a very, very helpful tool.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because you really go to a deeper level of it.
Yeah. And, that's something you can do,
Right. I find that when, working with people, is that we often tend to want to do just surface stuff. Oh, this was happening, and I don't want it to happen. And so I'm going to affirm it's not happening. And then, I'm going to wake up and it's a brand new day the next day, rather than, like you're talking about, digging into it, going deeper, and where is this? Where's the root, or whatever I can assess that it takes me to a deeper understanding. Yeah, that sounds like a great tool. I love the title, Primal Trust. That we
right.
Also, Andrea wrote it in the notes. It's really
right.
cool. Yes.
Yeah. It's very, very clear, and there's people can access like a whole community of classes that they have. Once a person is a member of the service, they're eligible for all of these classes to practice the techniques. And I just think that so much of what ails us has to do with being in a state of stress.
Yeah.
And so if you can get the nervous system to relax, people don't even realize that they're stressed. They're just so used to feeling that way.
Right. Yeah. we're bombarded with information from so many different areas and places, and
Right.
we can be trained. We can either train the systems or they train us, you know.
Right. And a lot of the
It's
information that we're bombarded with, creates fear.
yeah. Yeah, crocodile might get you next week if you watch it. Or a big bear or something's going to get a hold of you. You better watch it go into the mailbox. It's just like, oh, and then the bugs are coming. And then, I mean, it just, wow, they work very hard at getting us to be afraid. And then, of course, you have the healthcare system that rewards you to be sick. I mean, you really can justify what you're spending your money on because you're sick. I mean, it's just a whole thing. And
Yeah.
I'll be on the down low about that because it really gets me going. You should be rewarded for taking better care of yourself, for actually doing these processes. There should be more things that are covered for us to be healthier instead of being.
Right. Like medications are paid for by the insurance company in part,
Oh,
but
yeah. Mhm.
a person like trying to eat like a healthier diet, that is not subsidized, and that's not at all um, really emphasized as something that is particularly connected to your health mysteriously. Like
Right.
it's very it's very, very misaligned, everything.
Yeah. And obviously, I totally am with you. I mean, there are people that they just need medication and things like that. And I have great compassion. But I do find that there could be a reward-based system for, when you do. I remember like the only thing I used for years, at least up until now, is, B12. And it's like the amount they charge the insurance company for me to get a shot of B12. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's, you know what I mean. So anyway, another talk for another day. Oh me, but we're discovering things all the time. And I guess the question is, if we know that in tuning into all this stuff, I mean, I know people that, are taking, well, I was related to one. And, it's like, oh, I'm just so anxious and I'm so that. But like first thing in the morning, let me turn on that TV. Let me see if people know that, why can't they just, as Bob Newhart would say, in your field, you probably saw that episode when somebody kept asking him something and he'd say, just stop it. Just stop it. I mean, if people know that, why don't they get off of it? Are we addicted to negativity? Is our first go to be stressed, or have we succumbed to? I'm just
I think
asking
I
your
think I
opinion.
think you have to bring a lot of consciousness to not
Yeah.
be in a state of constant fight or flight and survival. And
Yes.
definitely you need to limit your exposure to the news because it's so toxic and fear promoting. But there's so many things that can be done that increase resilience, and that's really a lot of the focus of my book. Um, it's set in the context of the astrology of these times, which is that we are in this big phase of transition. We're going through a death and a birth. And whenever there's those kinds of shifts, it creates a lot of stress because there's so much change. And the people who were in power are trying to hang on to their power and, um, you know, behaving increasingly badly. And um, so there's so much going on, and we need to take the best possible care of ourselves
What's
in
the name?
order
You
to.
have a copy of your book there? Not to interrupt you. Do you have a copy you can hold up of your book?
I do not have one right here. No.
All right. What's the name of it? And
It's called
we're
it's called Sacred Psychiatry.
wow.
Yeah.
Great name.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
name, by the way.
Yeah.
And so you include all the aspects of the tools that you've been working with through the years with your
Right.
clients. So,
Right. So the full name is Sacred Psychiatry, um, transforming the personal and transpersonal to create health and consciousness.
mm,
Um, so, like as I mentioned, it starts out like kind of laying out the astrological context that we find ourselves in and the need, which is more than ever, of having tools that create resilience. So, like one of the things that creates resilience is having like the most healthful diet. Like if people don't have a good diet, they don't feel well. They feel contracted and or have no capacity for expansion, and their energy is low. So having like a whole foods diet that doesn't have processed and packaged foods and not eating too much, that like overnutrition can really like create low energy,
mhm,
and really damages, our cellular health and mitochondria, which are the energy um, powerhouses of our cells. So proper nutrition. And then, it's not just like the right food. It's like blessing your food before you eat it so that
mm,
you're, like expressing gratitude, increasing the kind of connection with the sacred as you eat your meal.
mhm,
Um, and, then there's like, like in the nutritional advice in this country. It's like you should eat the same thing in summer as in winter. The prescription is like for the whole year round. There's
right,
no there's
right.
no awareness of seasonality, and
Mm,
that certain foods are more helpful for us when we're um, in wintertime, warm cooked foods, and maybe, I mean, intuitively we know this, but in terms of nutritional prescriptions, there's none of that. And
right.
then there's no discussion of like the energetic quality of food. So like if you buy produce at the farmer's market, then it has like this quantity of energy that it doesn't have if it's been picked, a long time ago and packaged in plastic and flown from Mexico
Right.
to here. It's
Mhm,
just not the same, even
yeah,
though
that's right.
both of them may be zucchinis. They're just very, very different in terms of, the one that you just pulled out of the ground has a lot more life force in it, and when you eat it, it gives you a lot more life force. But that's not anything ever part of the discussion.
No, nor muscle testing.
Hmm.
I mean, just simple, my body wants this, yes or
Yeah,
no. I mean,
yeah,
and a lot of times people, their vibration wants to change, but they still are determined to eat the same foods their parents would eat. And it doesn't work. And then they wonder why they have gut issues. And, is yeah, I love that you address the whole body,
yeah.
you know. So it's so important of that kind of energetic connection. I,
Yes.
I
There's
learned
no
that
way.
years ago, traveling on the road a lot as a keynote speaker, and I still do that. Like there are certain things that may be negotiable. Like it doesn't matter how much you pay for a hotel room or how much the person you represent or company pays for a hotel room. You can still be next door to somebody that parties. I mean, you always have, it doesn't matter about certain things or plane delays and all that, but I'm always getting on that plane with a big old bag of, nuts and fruit and food, what they will allow. Obviously, from other countries, you can't carry fruit, but it's so important, to take care of yourself and drinking, hydrating.
Yep.
People tease me when I get off the plane because I'm like this. It just makes such a such a difference. But that's
Yeah.
an area I don't like to ever sacrifice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a big consequence for it. And, many people are like completely sedentary. They don't get any like physical movement. And that's also very, very hard on the organism. Many people spend all their time indoors. They don't get any sunlight. They spend all their time in front of screens and just, are bathed in electromagnetic frequencies. And that's also very hard on the organism.
Like when they go outside, they wear sunglasses.
Yep.
So it blocks the good stuff, the good mojo. I haven't worn sunglasses in years.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine wearing sunglasses now, but that's what we were told. You wear them, but it totally, takes away a lot of the goodness.
That's true. That's true.
Coming through our eyes. What is it they say about the new smoking is remote
sitting.
Yeah.
Sitting. No, it really does create stress for the body and inflammation. Movement is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
As is like routine and regularity. Like the body really likes it when you go to bed at the same time and you get up at the same time and you sort of alter things in accordance with, the sun, and that you get early morning sunlight. That does a lot for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all kinds of sort of simple things, but it's not talked about. Like it's just, okay, you're feeling sick because you're eating a terrible diet and you're sitting inside all the time and in front of the computer and not getting any exercise or any sunlight, and so you feel depressed. Okay, so here's a prescription for antidepressants.
Right.
Let's treat that. What the hell?
Yeah, let's treat that. Yeah. Let's treat that. And then we'll give you special parking places at Disneyland so you don't have to walk as far as the rest of us. It was funny that you said something about dying, and I love that you said we're in between dying and being born again. It's interesting. I've been contemplating that as the next title, not that one, exact words, but of my next book. When did you die? When did you die? 8 steps to stop dying every day and start waking up. So I love that you said the word die. It's like, people, we need to talk about this more. We need to be grown-ups about it, and it's like words like transitioned and, they put my dog to sleep. The dog died. The person died. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, it is, none of us are going to, what is it that quote is? We're not going to get out of this alive. Come on.
Right.
So, I mean, I love hearing somebody use the word die. I'm like, oh, I like you. Thank you. Because it's like calling it something different is not going to change the fact that that's what it is. You die.
Yeah.
Energetically, are we pruned? Are we reborn? And I think we die and we're born many times in this one lifetime.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Certain aspects.
Yeah.
So how long has your book been out?
It was published in January of 2024 this year.
Well, that wasn't long ago. Is it doing well?
Yeah, it is. It is doing well. It got a lot of awards, actually.
Oh, good. You say that so calmly.
I'm excited.
Of course you are. Yeah, well, that is wonderful. Well, what can we hold for you in your practice? Where are you located?
I'm in Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is that a painting of? Is that a painting of a?
That's a painting of it's a print of a white lion.
Okay.
The lions figure prominently in my book. I started the book with a myth about the white lions.
Oh, okay.
I went to Africa in 2013 and went to visit the white lions. There are actually white lions in Africa they're in a place called Timbabati, which is like a conservation area. The white lions are a genetic anomaly, and there's Zulu legends about these white lions. They were said to first have been born during the Ice Age when the people were starving and they came to help. They came down from the stars to help and to teach the people to hunt and to survive. And then when the danger was past, they left again, and they said that they wouldn't return unless the people were in danger again. And now they've started to be born again. And the African shaman Credo Mutwa said that they are coming with a message to humankind that either we get into a right relationship with nature, a relationship of love and respect where we're in alignment and respect the primacy of nature, or we're going to go extinct. Mm-hmm. And I think he's right.
Oh, yeah.
And the white lions are really magnificent. And it's also like, we're moving astrologically into the age of Aquarius. And in astrology, there's 12 signs of the zodiac, and on one side is a sign, on the opposite side is sort of its complementary sign. So the complementary sign to Aquarius is Leo. So anything that, like the shadow side of Aquarius is very much the antidote is like the Leo energy. And Leo is about the heart, and it's about courage, and it's about creativity and self-expression and caring about the children and about the future. Yeah. So we need that Leo energy now.
Yes. Well, you just described me.
Oh, really?
I'm a Leo.
Are you? Are you?
Yeah.
What's your birthday?
August 17th.
August 17th. Okay.
Yeah, I'm all about the children and the well-being and the planet and the earth. And it's like, it's like my good friend used to say, oh, why can't I just be like my husband and say, I want to be good at playing golf? But no, I think about what can I do to help the planet and do this and do that. But, I wouldn't trade my karma for anything, and I'm sure you wouldn't yours. But I love that story that you're telling, and I truly feel that. I interviewed someone a couple of months ago on the show, and she was saying that another thing that's occurring now, and it felt right to me, is a lot of animals are showing up, and they're showing us more boldly their abilities. And we are, as human beings with all this entitlement, especially in this culture, are starting to see it and see the intelligence that they carry. And I've always said that many, many years, that the day would come that we would totally apologize to them for our ignorance. That in many ways they're so much smarter than we would ever have the capacity to be. Yeah. So I love that. I always show that story sometimes when I'm talking about nature is Anthony Lawrence. Are you familiar with Anthony Lawrence? And he was real committed to helping the elephants.
Oh.
Okay. And so when he died, they all showed up in front of his house.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. I've seen grown people cry. It's one thing to tell somebody. It's another thing to see it as a visual.
Right.
It's like,
right. No. There's so much consciousness there. So much
consciousness there.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm glad that the moment you mentioned the white lions, I go, oh my gosh, I hope they're protected, because some ego out there with a weapon will want to hang them up on a wall and say,
no, that actually has happened, and that is part of the effort to conserve them, because of all of this like canned hunting. It's really
it's sick. I'm sorry, it's sick. I don't have people like that in my life. It's hard to believe that this is anyway. I don't understand that people, that false power, that I have power over something else, because in truth we don't.
Yeah.
True power, and you started our program that way. True power, you don't need power over anything else. you're comfortable with who you are and give permission to everybody else and everything to be the same.
Right. And you celebrate them for being themselves. You don't try
Right.
to control them and make them be who you want them to be.
Right. Exactly. It's been so nice visiting with you.
Same here. Same here.
I see that wisdom just everywhere in your aura. I'm like, girl, you could talk for hours, never skip a beat. But I've learned a lot today, and it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me and for inviting
Absolutely.
me and having this great conversation.
Absolutely, and the same with you, Judy. And continue to wish you well with your book. And is it on your website? Do you travel and speak at different places like the Parliament and places?
It's on my book is on my website. I'm going to be a keynote speaker at a conference in Sedona about bringing spirituality into psychotherapy in mid-October.
Oh, well, that's the best place for you right there, Sedona. Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, what a pleasure.
Thank you.
Great having you, and thank you
so
much. Yeah, we'll enjoy seeing where your work takes you and what continues to make you come alive.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.